my clothes were drenched in blood. I mean, they're soaked. They were red. My hat was red. My jacket was red. My pants were red. And I remember thinking, okay, I have to stop the bleeding and I have to find my tent. So I wrapped a game bag around my head because I could feel I had huge flaps off my temple area. And so I just wrapped a game bag around my head and texted my hunting partner and texted my wife and said, hey, look, something happened. I'm bleeding, but I don't think it's an emergency. I'm going to try to find my way back to the tent.
This segment of DoD TV is brought to you by Leopold, American to the core.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast, episode number 179.
179, can you believe it?
Titled Backcountry Boulderdash. In your face.
In your face. I don't think our guest is going to find that funny, Tim.
We're not known for being funny. So why start now?
That's true. So excited about our guest. We'll introduce that in a second. Before we do, you took Sophie out and you guys harvested a doe this past weekend, didn't you?
After hunting for the past 3 years, she's hunted 2 years. She took a year off last year. I think she just kind of got burnt out with it.
Sick of her dad.
My dad's not a good hunting guide, so I'm going to stop going. This year, because you got that Mission Sub 1 crossbow and let me borrow it, she was much more apt to go out with that. She's still a little spooked by firearms.
Yeah.
So we got out, set up a blind and on a food plot that we put in this summer. And this doe came in exactly as I had hoped it would happen. Walked into probably 18 yards and then started getting a little spooky about the big black triangle of the blind window that she was seeing. Cause we popped up a blind that afternoon, which I don't like to do, but we had to because of the wind. And Sophie's kind of looking around through the scope. She's like, I can't find it. I can't, because it was so darn close. The doe was quartering to us, which is not a great shot, but she'd been shooting really well. So I felt good about her ability to hit the mark. And she's like, can I pull the trigger? And I was like, please do. Cause I'm anxious. Like it's a big deal for her. And it's something I've looked forward to almost my entire life.
Sure.
As soon as you get into hunting, you're like, I want to do this for my kids someday. And she smoked her. And, but she ran off. She partially hit gut and I was concerned that we wouldn't be able to find her. All we found was some blood mixed with gut material, but not a whole lot. So, I said, let's back out, come back tomorrow morning. I know it sucks because she really wanted to lay hands on that deer, but I was like, let's not push it. On the drive out of the property, I turned the headlights off in the hopes that I would see the orange lighted knock on the end of the bolt. Yeah. And sure enough, back in some tall weeds on the way up a ridge, maybe about 60 yards away from where the shot occurred, I see a little pinprick of light. And I was like, Sophie, I see your bolt. There's no guarantee your deer's attached to it, but let's go at least check it out.
Yep.
Trying to temper her expectations all along the way here. And we walked up to it and sure enough, her deer was lying there. Dead.
Perfect. Good eating.
Dead. It was great. She had a friend over Saturday night. And so I went ahead and made the tenderloins. I pan fried them. And her friend ate like a pile of tenderloin because I'll cut it and then I'll pound it out flat and then bread it and pan fry it in bacon grease. It's really good.
I would know you've never brought any in for us.
I brought some in today. I happened to eat it though before I got a chance to offer. I intended to offer you part of the sandwich. Sure. I just forgot.
Yeah. Okay.
So sorry.
All right.
But her friend loved it. So she's been taking victory laps all weekend with her deer. She's really excited. Then Sunday night she asked if she could go hunting on Monday.
Awesome.
And I was like, she's hooked. You got school. No, we're not going hunting, but I fully appreciate that.
Pretty awesome, man. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. So she's excited. If you want to see the hunt, it's up in DeerCast.
Awesome. All right. Well, why don't we have our next guest join us and introduce this guy? I'm excited about this one, a guy I've known for a long, long time, and he takes adventure to a whole new level. Yeah, we got Brad Clement, who has endured the Drury Outdoors spanking machine. That sounds horrible. But is it false? No. Okay, so let's dig in. So Brad, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Matt, great to see you again. It's been too long.
Yeah, that's right. So the little backstory, Brad used to probably in the around 2004, 2003, 2004, 2005, somewhere in there. He filmed with Mark and Terry, and somewhere along the line he got put with Terry mostly. And that was I guess it'd be about 04, because that was when he just got the farm that he owns now.
Yeah, I started with Terry on his Illinois farm, and we filmed the first season of Dream Season in Missouri that year. And that's when I started. And then Terry and I left. We literally left from filming Dream Season. And, Terry drives like 95 miles an hour. And he's like, yeah, just follow me to this farm in Illinois. And I'm nervous and trying to keep up with them. And that's how we started. It was that week or so in Missouri filming Dream Season. That was my first time ever. Yeah. And zooming over to Illinois, and from there, the rest is history.
So that would have been Dreams. So I'm trying to think of where.
2003, I think.
Yeah, that'd have been 2003. And it's one of those deals where at that time, Dream Season was such a big deal for us internally. And we've talked about it on podcasts before with like Kyle and JJ. And that was the beginning. Like we were trying to break ground and do something way different and kind of start a new era, not only in outdoor television and reality television, but for our company. Yeah. And so, you probably saw Mark and Terry at their peak analness. And that's saying something, because we all know how they can be. So, we're going to get into probably some funny stories at the end of this podcast, because you were, like I said, you were with Mark and Terry for a few years there. And I know there were some good times had in Kirksville along the way. So.
Yeah.
Brad's got some serious outdoor cred.
Oh yeah,
more so than most guys. Like a lot of guys say, yeah, I like to hike.
I'm an outdoors man.
That kind of stuff. Have you ever been past base camp 3 like that? But that's the separator of people.
Yeah. So Brad, you have been to the peak of Everest how many times now?
I've done 5 expeditions to Everest. To the top only twice.
Only
5
twice.
Expeditions. And it was always filming, and filming for Discovery or PBS. So it's been a cool part of, cool chapter of my life, spending about a decade working on Everest.
Yeah, a lot of the things that you've done have probably been seen by, some of our audience who, anytime that stuff goes on, you're always like tuned right into it. You're thrilled you're like, who the hell's filming this? Oh, it's Brad. Brad's the crazy guy filming it all.
Which is incredible, because you think about just getting on Everest, but then lugging around the camera gear that's required for filming that.
Well, and back then it was even bigger than it is now, right? I mean, it was a lot of gear.
Now it's all pretty tiny cameras, and they do an excellent job. But yeah, they were big cameras, and I was young and stupid, so it all worked out.
So you had been to the top on both. Which sides? Because it's 2 sides, right?
Well, the kind of the standard routes. There's a south side route and there's a north side route. And yeah, I've climbed to the top from both sides, which is cool, and it's cool to see. It's cool to see that whole mountain, and it, to do that mountain or any big mountain, you really immerse yourself in that world, and to get to experience all sides of that mountain and all the cultures and all the intricacies of the geology, and then just the different technical requirements to get up on that mountain from various sides is cool. It's fun. It's awesome.
It's really become something much different in the last probably 5 years than it was 15 years ago, hasn't it? I mean, it's been, you hear a lot of negative publicity about kind of what's happened to the mountain. I mean, what are your views on that type of stuff? I know it's awesome that more and more people are experiencing it, but it seems like, there's more and more commercialized. There's more trash kind of being left behind, all those types of things.
Yeah. The first year I went to Everest was 2004. The last year I went to Everest, certainly not the last year. I'm still actively filming and guiding expeditions to the big peaks. But the last year I was Everest was 2014. So that's a decade of, kind of a window view of what happened from a human side on that mountain. And it's changed. Personality of the expeditions have changed. I would hate to criticize anyone who wants to go there. It's still an Everest experience, and good for them. it's just changed quite a bit. It's much more commercial, much more run by guiding agencies.
Yeah.
Not a lot of private people, individuals are just showing up, climbing it, or even trying new routes. Every year someone tries a new route, but the majority of the people who are in those crowds are getting larger and larger and larger. Those crowds typically do one of two routes, and they're guided, and that's just the way it is these days. So very different from certainly when I first started out, and very different from, I started guiding as a mountaineer guide in the 90s. And so from the late 90s, mid-late 90s to 2020, the whole world of mountaineering has changed considerably, but
sure,
it's not good or bad. It's just the way it is. And,
sure.
Everest has changed just like the whole world of high altitude climbing.
And even Krakauer's book, Into Thin Air, that event took place in the mid to late 90s. Is that right?
1996.
Okay. Yeah. And even then he was kind of leading into the fact, like a lot of like chiropractors and, you know, people that aren't necessarily mountaineers, but they're paying guides to go up. And it sounded like things were trending that direction towards less experience, you know, people that have some means, but less experience. And even though it's more commercialized and more people have done it, it's still such a I mean, just being at that elevation, your body is dying as you're up there, which is just, it's insane to me that people,
Brad,
want to do that because it's fascinating. I mean, did you see dead bodies when you're up there? Are they?
I did every year I was up there. The last year I was there, 2014, we were doing a project for Google, and we were top secret. We were there before most of the team showed up, and we were at Camp 1, which is pretty low. It's just under 20,000 feet. And that morning, the morning after we'd reached Camp 1, there was a huge avalanche that came down 10,000 vertical feet. So it's not like a small, I mean, this is a lot of material coming down this mountain, and it killed 16 people 500 feet below us. And our team were part of the first responders, and it was a horrible situation. And at that point, I realized, you know, I need to maybe step back from Everest for a little while. And it would take a lot for me to go back. It would have to be just the right team, just the right circumstance, just the right cinematography project to get me back there. I kind of feel like that was a great chapter of my life. But that was a decent wake up call that I'd always been involved in accidents and deaths. I knew that was a reality of mountaineering. But to respond to 16 people who had been crushed by 10,000 feet of ice and snow was interesting.
And I remember you telling me about that when you got back, and saying that as you guys were going through the past, the avalanche happened, or whatever you call it, you kind of even said it didn't look right, or seemed a little dangerous, right?
Yeah, there was a huge, we call them seracs. And so seracs are blocks of ice. And this block of ice, again, was thousands of feet above our route. And it looked like the size of several hotels just hanging over the route.
Jeez.
And we all knew that, wow, this doesn't look right. let's get through here quickly. And sadly, the guys that came up the next morning just weren't as lucky.
There was a story you told me once. I think it was maybe the first time you went up. You were filming a guy for maybe a pharmaceutical company. It was did he have diabetes or?
Yeah, he had type 1 diabetes. He's a fantastic guy. I'm a great guy, but yeah, he had type 1 diabetes, and that puts a lot of stress on your body, which is already under stress at these altitudes.
And so you guys were working your way up, and how far did you reach before kind of
we were on our summit push. We were filming for Discovery Channel, and ended up being a really cool 6-part series. But I was filming Will, and we were on our summit push. And yeah, Will, our oxygen systems stopped working, which isn't great. And
understatement
Will
of the day.
started not to be able to see. He essentially was going blind. So yeah, we had to get Will out of there. And we did. And what's funny is Will went back. He summited Everest. He summited several 8,000 meter peaks, of which there are only 14 in the world. Mm-hmm. He's fantastic. But we left that trip feeling bad that we didn't reach the summit, but lifelong friends. And so it worked out, and, we got him off the mountain and he regained his sight.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, originally the reason I wanted you to come on here a couple weeks back, Terry sent Mark and myself a text message with a picture of your face and in a tent somewhere on a mountain, and it looked like you had gotten the tar beat out of you. And so come to find out, you were elk hunting in Colorado, correct? Which is, you live in Colorado, and you were backcountry elk hunting, self-guided type of a deal. You do it every year, and had an accident. So take us through what happened on this.
Well, it was funny. So every year, I always remember Terry's birthday, because that's usually when we'd kind of get together to start filming again. And he was, he's an old man. I wanted to wish him a happy birthday, and hope his hair hadn't turned quite as gray as mine is turning now. But,
oh no, it's white.
Wished him a happy birthday, and he mentioned he was at the lake with Willa, and I was like, wow, say hi to Willa, and we were just shooting the shit. And I had just gotten back from this elk hunting trip. And he was like, how are you? And I sent him that photo that then I guess he sent you and Mark. And so I sent him that photo. I was like, well, this was earlier this morning and I just got back. And so what happened was years ago, a friend of mine here in Colorado, he and I sat down and we said, we've never elk hunted. We're in Colorado. We should go elk hunting. And we didn't want to put in for long draws and permits. And we're like, okay, so we're going to go national forest, public access, over the counter, which are like your worst odds for getting good elk.
Mm-hmm. Strike 1, 2, and 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So we started drinking some bourbon at a local bar, pulled out all these maps and looked at where those 3 qualifications fit. And we basically just said, where's the steepest, nastiest, hardest place to access that might have good elk access, but where no one would really want to hike to? And we just threw our fingers at this point, didn't scout, went up there the first year, and there were elk everywhere. Nice. It was fantastic. Yeah. Because it's nasty to get there. And so we've been going there ever since. And Matt, I've sent you some photos. We pulled out some decent bulls.
Oh yeah.
And went back this year. My buddy Ted came in with me for a few days, but he had to get back to work. And so for another 7 days, I was by myself, and I had 2 days left to hunt. And because there are tons of wildfires right now in Colorado, and they've been burning most of the summer, it must have affected the elk patterns. We weren't seeing any animals, not even any real sign. And we attempted to go into a new area. So we were going kind of exploring in areas we weren't familiar with. Ted left. I was still trying to hunt this area. And basically what happened is I sat, and I wish I could tell you more. I just don't remember what happened. So I was sitting in a boulder field, just a big pile of rocks, overlooking a really beautiful meadow with a wallow, and hunted there in the evening. All I remember, it gets dark that time of year around 7:30 at night. I woke up, it was dark. I just was face down, and all I remember thinking is, I'm bleeding from my head. I don't remember what happened. I don't remember what caused this incident. And looking back at my texts, what's funny is, as remote as we are, I'd chosen a campsite and I'd hunted this area in the evening because I had a really decent cell signal. And so looking back at my texts, the first texts I sent were around 8:30 at night. So I don't know if I was knocked out for an hour. I don't know if that's just when I started to kind of recollect and come to consciousness of what was going on. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember moving, but my clothes were drenched in blood. I mean, they're soaked. They were red. My hat was red. My jacket was red. My pants were red. And I remember thinking, okay, I have to stop the bleeding and I have to find my tent. So I wrapped a game bag around my head because I could feel I had huge flaps off my temple area. And so I just wrapped a game bag around my head and texted my hunting partner and texted my wife and said, hey, look, something happened. I'm bleeding, but I don't think it's an emergency. I'm going to try to find my way back to the tent.
If that's not an emergency, what the hell is?
Clothes are soaked in blood.
I wouldn't make it in Colorado, apparently.
So I did find my tent, which was good. I had a headlamp. What's weird is within minutes of kind of realizing something was messed up, I became pretty lucid and put my headlamp on, knew the terrain, was like, okay, I need to go this way and then that way. And eventually kind of stumbled upon my tent, which I think it took about 2 hours, which is longer than it should have taken. And got back to my tent. I rarely take a first aid kit of any magnitude, but I always take a few things. I take tape and I take a syringe, not with a needle, but a plunger.
Sure.
So I washed out all the wounds with water. I have cuts all over my face, but the main cut was up here. And
what was the temperature
all
like,
out,
Brad?
put gauze on it, just taped the heck out of it, and figured, okay, it's dark. It's about 8 miles back to my truck and several thousand feet of descent, most of which is off trail. It'd be stupid to try to hike out in the dark. That's just going to worsen the situation. So I just, went to bed, communicated with Ted and my wife, Tanya. They knew roughly where I was because Ted and I had scouted that area before he left, but he didn't know exactly where my tent was, but he knew the general area. And I said, look, Ted's a former EMT medical professional. He was asking me all sorts of questions like, okay, do you know what year it is? Do you know who the president is? You know where you are? You know your name. Keep drinking water. You need to text me every 15 minutes. He was great. Tanya was like, we're calling in the cavalry. I was like,
helicopter.
Yeah. It was like, no, let me sleep. And then I'll just pack up and hike out in the morning, which is what happened. And there are various parts of that incident that I don't remember, but I do remember kind of the last few steps to my tent. And Matt, I sent you those texts between Ted and I. I don't really remember sending him those texts. But once back to the tent, I was fine. And the bleeding semi-stopped through the night. And that's when I took that photo that you guys have seen, that woke up in the morning and just took a photo and then put my stuff together and hiked out and drove home. And on the way home, my brother-in-law, who lives where I do in Boulder, he's a plastic surgeon. So took a photo, a close-up of the major wounds. I was like, hey, do you think this needs stitches? And I didn't hear back from him for a day because he was out of town. And his response was, yeah.
If you have flaps.
And so it was really funny. Like he's wearing soccer shorts and flip flops, stitching my face up. And he said, I can't make you look handsome, but I can at least do something to reduce the scars, which I already knew that. So it was funny. So to the best of, if I had to guess what happened was I stood up, the hunt was over. It was getting dark. And I must have stood up and slipped on a rock because of pretty loose rocks.
Yeah.
And maybe fell and hit my head. Or because it was kind of a cliffy area, maybe something like a small rock or something from above just happened to dislodge and flew down and hit my head. I have no idea what happened. And that's kind of it. That's all I know.
I would have to think that your experience, your vast knowledge and experience through the years as a mountaineer, had to have helped in this situation. Cause you're downplaying it. You're an even kill guy, but that's a really scary situation. I mean, I think for your average guy, if you're, if that's a first time trip, out west and you're backpacking like that, I mean, I think that would be
wake up face down with covered in blood.
I think that would scare the hell out of a lot of people, myself included. So I definitely think your experience had to help and keep you, because you've seen it all through the years, but that's a pretty harrowing experience.
Yeah. But, I figured if I have a brain bleed or something, what can I do? So no reason to get too excited, because I can control what I can control, and what I can't control is the way it is. And so, take the steps you can take, and then get the heck out of there when it's safe to do so.
So you weren't worried, or maybe you were, about going to sleep that night? I mean, I would assume if you were unconscious, you had some sort of, you obviously have a head injury. Like, were you afraid? That's the thing they always say not to do, is don't let, if you had a concussion or something, don't let them go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And that, I would think that would be a scary part of the evening for you.
Well, funny enough, the night before, I'd set up this new camp, and my camp is very simple. I don't sleep in a tent. I just have a tarp, and it's super lightweight. But I set up this new little camp, and I fell asleep to a mountain lion chirping pretty close to me. Perfect. And so what I was thinking was, thank God, I wasn't just laying there knocked out, bleeding, and a cat thought, this is a easy good pickings. Opportunity.
I think I'm going to throw up.
That's what I was thinking of. I wasn't thinking too much, I wasn't going to wake up. I was with it by the time I got to the tent, and I felt that I'd controlled the bleeding. I palpated my whole head, and there was no crunchiness. I hadn't broken anything. I didn't feel like I had a fractured skull. So I felt pretty good. I just thought, I was actually more upset that I wasn't going to hunt the next day. I was
put a crimp in my plans.
Yeah. But I couldn't eat either, because I did something to my nose and my teeth, and my teeth were really loose for a few days, and they were bleeding. So I hit something somewhere. I just hit my face.
Yeah.
Or something hit my face. I don't know what happened, but it just sucked for a few days.
It seems like so much of survival is your frame of mind.
Yeah.
And will you accept, this is my reality? These are the steps that I have to take to get out of here safely, and not make mistakes within that, put
a plan in place and execute it.
Yeah, exactly. And something that makes sense, that's kind of commensurate with your skills as a mountaineer. Because sometimes people, they get hurt real bad and they start overestimating their abilities. 8 miles is not a big deal. Obviously you're in shape, and this is the small potatoes compared to Everest, but maybe, most normal guys walking 8 miles out of any place is kind of a stretch. So
in those conditions. Yeah.
So it's very relative to your skill level, your expertise, your knowledge of the area, all those kind of things.
Well, I told Terry when we were trading texts, said, at least I didn't fall out of a tree stand. But in all seriousness, he suffered bigger injuries. He was just closer to home.
Yeah.
And so in the big picture, I think so much that scares people is the unknown, and maybe being in the wilderness would be intimidating to a large population, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And so I felt comfortable with the way I at least momentarily treated what I could treat, and figured I can get out tomorrow and go from there. I didn't have broken ribs. I didn't have broken wrists. I didn't have anything that could really be a problem.
Other than a busted head.
Flesh wound.
Hey, we don't need this.
Yeah.
One of my buddies this just goes to the nature of accidents. You don't know they're coming. They just happen. My buddy and his wife were walking along the Katy Trail, which is an old rails to trail project here in the St. Louis area, along the Missouri River. They sat down at a bench, and a piece of rock gave way from the limestone bluff there where they had cut through for the old railroad tracks, tumbled down the cliffside, struck him in the back of the head. it almost killed him. Like he's a completely changed person now. And him and his wife were just sitting there side by side, and this like 2-pound chunk of rock comes tumbling down.
Crazy.
And nails him. You know, what are the odds? But stuff like that happens.
Yeah.
Traumatic brain injuries are crazy, and it makes you realize how fragile. I mean, we're strong in many ways, but how fragile the networking is with the brain. So, which, and I'm sorry for your friend, but that also told me when this happened, because I was so lucid that, even if I had a concussion or been knocked out for whatever, an hour, I was lucid and I was still myself, and I could tell that, as could the people I was texting. So
yeah, you're loopy in general. So
exactly. The scar only helps. It can only help the general appearance and allure of my poor personality.
It gives you an excuse, quite frankly, of why you're so crazy.
I got hit in the head.
I fell off a mountain.
Do you have any desire to go back and try to recreate, like try to do some forensics and figure out just what happened?
So I went back before I hiked out. I kind of had to hike through the area I had been hunting the previous night to get back out. And I looked around for a while. I knew right where I was sitting. I went back to that spot. What's funny is there was no blood there, even though I had blood all over me. So did it happen in that spot? I don't know.
Weird.
I don't have enough dots to connect to even know that it absolutely happened where I had been sitting. I assume it did. I was hunting muzzleloader, so it was black powder. My rifle is fine. My backpack, I carry a little backpack. Everything was packed perfectly. So I don't think I packed up after the accident. I must have packed up first, but I didn't fall because the rifle was fine. It wasn't scratched or anything. A huge boulder field, it would have been pretty messed up. So I don't know exactly what happened. And it's a mystery.
I'm going to blame the aliens. We'll go back to Mark and Terry and Coondog story.
They took them, they roughed them up, and then they put them back.
Yeah. They're like, this one's no good.
Abduction story.
Send them back.
I mean, the only thing that really bothers me again is that I didn't get to finish that few extra days of hunting. But it was the right thing to do to come out. I woke up that morning and I thought about staying. But when I went and when I finally saw my brother-in-law, it had been long enough where I'd stopped the bleeding well enough, and it had been long enough that he had to cut open all the wounds again, and he pulled it all back. And he's like, there is pus in here. So I'm glad I didn't decide to stay for a couple of days and have like some infection in my head.
Yeah.
So,
died from stupidity.
Isn't that like,
so I'm still just, elk season here is so short, and you only get one. You get to pick archery, muzzleloader, or several seasons of rifle, and they're only a few days each. And you don't get one, you don't get to choose another season.
Yeah.
And so I'm just upset because that's like my favorite time of year now.
Yeah.
And I sent Tim some photos yesterday. I mean, you see that it's gorgeous.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful. High altitude in early September. The bulls should be bugling. They weren't this year. But it's gorgeous. And so that's my big regret, is that I didn't get to finish the season, but things could be worse, and feel pretty lucky that if whatever hit my head or however I fell, whatever it was right on my temple. And had it been a little harder or a little different, I think it could have been less than positive results. So.
Yeah.
I bet there's some filthy hippies ultimate Frisbee disc laying out there in that boulder field. Took a 200-yard lob.
Yeah.
The other thing I think about is just the importance of a flight plan. Someone knowing kind of where you are, at least the vicinity, just in case, because you don't know if you're going to be able to operate your phone, or maybe you get set, like when Tim Wells had that accident over in Africa, his radio was up in his tree in his pack.
Yeah.
And he was down on the ground bleeding out, and he couldn't get up there to make the call out for help.
Yeah. In general, I mean, we're fortunate in the fact that typically we're always hunting with somebody. We're always, these adventures always take place with somebody else for us, you know, typically. And so the plan is always, like in Dad's instance where he had the tree stand accident, the cameraman got him out of there right away, so we're thankful for that kind of thing. But in general, your average guy is by themselves, and it doesn't have to be as epic of a story of a boulder field in Colorado on a mountainside. I mean, it could be literally in a windy scenario, a limb falling down and hitting you. I know a guy that passed away from a limb falling over and hitting him, and back in the woods, or a heart attack after he picked up a turkey. Dad one year had found a guy that passed away from a heart attack. They were on a search mission for this guy in public land somewhere, and he had 2 turkeys, and one was over his shoulder, and another one was like he had maybe shot 2, or he had a heart attack. And recovering them, and they found them there laying there with the bird. So a billion different things can happen. It's not going to stop you from going out. But to your point, having a game plan, I think a lot of people with cell phone technology now, you're in a better spot to be able to communicate most times. I mean, not always, but to get a text out to somebody or let them know ahead of time, hey, I'm going to be here. I don't have service. So, at least they know if they don't hear from you, something weird's happening. They know where you're at.
Yeah. So. And to some degree, that technology has made us, at least it's made me a little lazy. I've tried to get better over the past couple of years of telling my wife, telling my buddies what stand I'm going to be in. Because like I said, if you're separated from your phone or you just aren't lucid enough to operate it, then it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah.
Someone needs to know where to come find you.
Yeah. So, well, I appreciate you sharing the story with us. I mean, when we were texting back and forth, I wanted to have you on the podcast like the next day. Like, I can't move my mouth.
I was like, my teeth hurt. I can't talk. Yeah. Yeah.
But like I said, pretty harrowing experience. And I'm just happy that it didn't turn out worse. And you're here to talk about it with us. And, before we move in, we got a couple other things that we typically do on the podcast that we want to get to. But I wanted to just 2 things. First, craziest story, craziest adventure, craziest thing that ever happened to you on one of these, because you've climbed the major peaks all across the world. What's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you?
Oh, I mean, crazy entails good and bad. I've had climbing partners next to me fall 4,000 feet to their death. That's not fun, but that's pretty crazy. And then I've just had some of the best experiences of my life, just feeling like, you ever feel like right where you are and what you're doing is exactly what you were made to do. And so many times in mountaineering, that's how I feel. And so whether it's East Africa or Nepal or the Himalaya or wherever, there are just so many experiences like that where it's like, just look around. I mean, this is incredible. And I feel exactly like this is where I should be right now. And so, nothing too crazy. In fact, in mountaineering, you try to mitigate craziness.
Sure.
And so everything is pretty slow motion, thought out, clinical in diagnosis, and just having those feelings, those emotions of, this is exactly where I should be. And this is exactly what I should be doing in general, are kind of the best times of my life. So
Tim and I feel that way every time we get on this podcast.
I'm sure.
Yes, I agree.
So yeah, that you have sent me some footage. We worked on a project one time together, and it didn't end up going anywhere. But you sent me some footage. I don't remember where exactly you were at, but you're on a bus, on a side of a mountain with one side's like a cliff, the other side, I hate that. It was just watching it was making me sick.
Yeah. Just getting to mountains sometimes is the trickiest part. A couple of years ago, I went to the Congo, which is not the safest place to be. In fact, I think it's judged the most dangerous country in the world just because of the people and the politics. And I remember we were training rangers within this national park in the Congo. We were training them mountaineering skills, and there's some beautiful mountains there, and they wanted to add mountaineering tourism to their portfolio to help the communities and help them have a livelihood and make money. And these rangers, even on the mountains, would carry their AK-47s. And we slept, these huts we slept in were so tiny and so nasty that we were all cramped together. And we slept several nights with the buttstock of AKs as our pillows. And I remember thinking at the time, like, maybe this isn't the best thing.
That's one of those moments where you were not right where you were supposed to be.
right.
Cuddle up to a clash.
Yes, because just getting to the mountains is sometimes, again, the crux, the technical craziness happens there.
Maybe speak to the Pangje Foundation. Did I say that correctly?
You did. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because Brad's very involved with a pretty cool project and has been for a few years now, and uses camera technology, like trail camera technology, and it's pretty neat in general, and trying to do some good out there in the world. So take us through that a little bit.
Yeah, thanks. So Pangje, that word is Nepal slang for snow leopard, and I think at this point, I've done something like 20 expeditions to Nepal, the greater Himalaya, the big peaks. And what I realized over time is this actually comes back to hunting and wildlife and just animals. I've lived my whole life as a hunter, and that may sound strange for what I'm about to say, but what I'm now very involved with is helping save endangered species and snow leopards, which are highly endangered, one of the rarest cats in the world, saving those cats. And in doing so, by helping save endangered species, we're actually teaching children and communities in these disenfranchised communities around the world about the importance of conservation. So many people think conservation and saving species is 180 degrees opposed to hunting, and I don't see it that way. And I think it'd be horrible to ever deny that I hunt. And hunters are conservationists. There are methods and ideologies that I don't agree with within the hunting world, but in general, hunting and caring for wildlife and conservation and managing land and taking care of the people around these areas is very much the same as what we're doing in endangered species conservation. So yeah, that's become a big part of my life, and more so now than going to these areas to climb these peaks. I'm visiting these areas around the world to help initiate conservation programs based on using endangered species conservation as ways to simultaneously help these, again, poor, disenfranchised communities and people around the world.
Sure. And then I'm sure there's an ecotourism aspect that's related to that. And there's dollars associated with that. I mean, that's the way you bring in resources to help take care of the people and at the same time protect the local ecology.
Tim, you're exactly right. By saving apex predators like snow leopards, you actually save the entire ecosystem. When you save and protect the entire ecosystem, you protect tourism. And in Nepal, places in East Africa, places anywhere around the world, anywhere in Asia, anywhere where you have an intact ecosystem and their economy, their GDP is tremendously based on ecotourism. So you're helping essentially save their bank account.
Yep.
You're helping them have livelihoods into the future by protecting the great outdoors.
Well, even think about locally, one of our DeerCast writers, Billy Cooper, he's 70, maybe 71. He remembers a time here in Missouri where seeing a whitetail was about as common as seeing a unicorn. I mean, the same thing with wild turkeys. Yeah. So, we can talk globally. We can also talk locally about what hunting and what targeted conservation efforts have done to species and brought them back from the brink. And said, like, Canada geese were.
Dad was telling me that. He's like, man, if you saw one of those growing up, he's like, it was like you saw, it was Christmas,
now they're like
early. Rats
all over the place.
I was like,
we've probably gone the other way.
Yeah. Have them all over our yard all the time in the neighborhood.
Yeah. So, but hunting waterfowlers have been a big part of that comeback process.
Absolutely. And just the permit process, paying for your hunting license.
Yep.
In Colorado, it's something like $1 billion industry, just buying license. And then that goes back into conservation. So yeah, we could go on, but the parallels are not dissimilar in our passions in life between hunting and conservation and protecting species. And then how that also helps these communities in education and livelihood opportunities well into the future.
You'd have to see some of the trail camera pictures that Brad has sent me over the years of these snow leopards in the wild. I mean, it's crazy stuff. Just, you know, in absolute wild. That camera might have been there for how long, you know, before it actually gets, you know, before it gets a picture or before they go to pick it back up or whatever. It's crazy. And they're beautiful, beautiful shots. Like a lot of times you're using Reconyx cameras too, aren't you?
Yeah. We're using over the counter trail cameras, just like anyone would buy to collect information on deer or turkey. That's what we're using.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Can't wait. Maybe I'll get a Snow Leopard on one of my Reconyx cameras.
I doubt it. I don't think so, Tim.
Something would be wrong. Cool. Well,
right.
we'll put a link in the show notes to the Pangje Foundation so folks can check that out and get a little more information.
Absolutely.
We should hop into our shout outs.
Okay, real quick. Let's do the shout outs for this episode. You go first.
Okay. This is on Apple Podcast from Eat, Sleep, Hunt, Repeat, LOL. He or she says, this is absolutely one of the best podcasts that I listen to. Love all the great tips. The hilarity, the soundboard is awesome. Also like the wildlife word and the question of the day. Keep the episodes coming.
He said the soundboard was awesome. He gets an applause.
We agree with him.
All right, next one. So this one comes from Cameron Dowd. Congrats, guys, on 2 great deer. He must be referencing our last podcast. Love how it happened the same evening, 2 different ways. Love the podcast as well. Listen to it every week. Watch and wait for it to drop each week. Even try to anticipate the soundboard at certain times. LOL. Keep up the great work.
Anticipate this.
So, what'd you think of that, Brad?
Good.
Yes, right up your alley.
Brad's impressed. I can tell.
Like Terry's bunkhouse.
That's right. Can even smell it.
So
All right.
true.
Let's get on to the question of the day.
We should also say thank you to everyone who's leaving feedback.
Yeah.
We love hearing from you guys, even if it's not positive, if it's just
I asked
feedback
him today,
in
I
general.
go, do we have any negative ones? I like reading the negative ones
Not
just
yet.
as much. So,
I'm sure we'll get some.
yeah. All right. So on to the question of the day. It's probably brought to you by Plano Cases. Protect your passion.
Hi, my name is Nick Ramovich. I'm from Western Pennsylvania. My question for you today is, when should I be hunting fields or acorns? I hunt hardwoods a lot where I live in Western Pennsylvania, but we have some CRP fields that we mow down and in and around our tree stands. It seems like the acorns are a lot better at the beginning of the year and during the rut, but in between them times, it seems like the fields are better. Would like your input, and thanks for the show. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Thanks, Nick, for the question. Kind of a multi-part question there, but in general, it's probably a little bit different for us here in the Midwest than it is in Western PA and where I've been in Pennsylvania. I mean, it's somewhat of a mountainous terrain. I'm not exactly sure what his setup is. I mean, he explained it there, but in general, the way we like to do it typically is early season, late season. We are hunting the fields, middle of the season, right around the rut is when we kind of hone in on the timber.
Yeah.
Now if you do have a big mass crop, he's talking about acorns dropping, that changes it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times deer won't get up out of their bedroom if there's acorns all around. They don't have to move very far. So
In the South, they're called acorns.
yeah, acorns.
By the way.
So you might be honing in, when you start hearing them or you start noticing that they're dropping and they're fresh, which I'm not sure out there, but right now is a good time to be hunting acorn flats here.
That's how I killed my deer.
Yeah. So, you want to hone in on where they're at. Basically, you want to go where they're going to be. And if you got a big acorn crop, I would think that's where they're going to be. If there's CRP fields, it's not like, yes, they might be grazing and eating and, in that, but it's not like that's a huge palatable destination food source for them necessarily. I wouldn't think anyways.
That was kind of my take too, that when the mass crop drops, that's when you want to be in the timber and or when the rut's happening and they're chasing does and they're moving. And then fields are like, if it's green field and it's palatable, then that's probably early season. And depending on what's there, it could be a late season option potentially too. But I mean, it's deer hunting is so local. It's like politics. Everything is local. You got to know exactly.
Quit bringing politics into this.
Sorry, I can't help it.
Haven't you learned your lesson?
But you have to know kind of what's happening locally, whether that's trail cams, observational sits, those kind of things. You learn over time.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid of the big timber.
Yep. Great question, Nick. I don't know if you have anything to add, Brad, big time Missouri deer hunter. Do you have anything you want to add to the question of the day answer?
You know what stinks about Colorado is where we hunt, there are no acorns. And I'm still a Midwestern kid at heart. And it's so dry out here. It's such a different type of hunting that I just hear that question and just makes me want to go back and hunt, whether it's the big timber or a food plot. It just, it pulls at my heartstrings. So great questions. And I'm glad you guys are still doing what you do.
When I had fleshed my deer skull because I'm going to do a Euro mount for it. And as I was cutting open kind of the jaw area, I cut through the esophagus and there were half chewed acorns inside. It's cool to see that he was mid swallow. Poor guy.
Sounds like you're a jerk.
Well, can I say I didn't have time to let him finish his bite.
All right.
Wildlife.
Well, yeah. Wildlife word of the day. And then I want some funny story about Mark and Terry. Could be either, could be both from Brad before we leave, and then we'll let him go. I'm sure he's a busy guy training for his next mountainous adventure. Death
defying.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the wildlife word is brought to you by Hunter Specialties, makers of the comprehensive Scent Away line of scent elimination products. So releaser pheromones indicate a doe's readiness to breed and primarily come from this part of their body: orbital sockets, preorbital glands, metatarsal gland, or the urogenital area.
Well, we always let our guests go first. Brad, what's your guess?
Where do the releaser pheromones come from?
I'm not going to answer that. Someone else step up to the plate.
I'm going to go with B, preorbital glands.
I'm really surprised you didn't go with urogenital because that would have been the way to go.
Is that the answer?
Yep. These are the pheromones actually contain the chemicals that tell a buck that a doe is about ready to breed, and they come from the urogenital area.
Well, I think it was a trick question. All right.
This show sucks, and it was rigged, and I hate it.
All right. So before we leave, Brad, you got to give me something on the boys.
You know, I think I filmed Mark and Terry for about 4 years, 4 or 5 years. All the good stories I really can't say publicly. but I got to tell you, those 4 or 5 years, every deer season, which would run September to January, they're the best times of my life. We never had a bad time. It was fantastic. But one of the first times I was filming with Terry, it was in Illinois, and he wanted to go to these stands, a set. And I don't think he'd been there in a couple of years. And we went in the morning. For the life of him, he couldn't find the things.
That's
We're
not
looking up in the trees. We didn't know where we were.
Somewhere.
And finally we found them. And, you know, they're not known for putting their stands low to the ground. I mean, their stands are so high, and at that time we were using the screw-in steps. And all, you know, that was kind of the way we did things back then. And all the steps, the trees had basically grown around the screw-in. So I'm barely being able to get up into this stand. I step on the stand Terry's going to be sitting in, and I get in my stand. There's no seat. And Terry's like, "We're going to do an all-day sit."
All-day sit where you stand all day.
Terrible for you.
And so I stood for 9 hours. And I remember thinking,
it's brutal.
Well, Terry's there, you know, dozing off every once in a while. And to this day, he and I laugh about that. I stood for 9 hours in this junker tree stand that clearly he had not been to in years. And to this day, we laugh about that. And, you know, it's funny how these not so fun situations over the years turn into some of the funniest memories. And I mean, we never had a bad day. We never had a bad day in all those years. It's fantastic.
That's great. I'm sure it was your fault because back in those days, they did have a certain kind of a tree stand. I remember where they would always pack in this like piece of material that you would put on the one,
Like a hammock almost.
kind of like that. Yeah. Where you put it on one side of the stand and then you'd stretch it. It barely would stretch far enough to get to the other side. And that's your seat. And I'm sure this was your fault somehow. I'm sure he let you know of it. I'm sure he never let you live it down.
Matt, as you know, whether it was my fault or not, it was my fault.
I know it well.
And I was criticized strongly by both Mark and Terry, I'm sure.
Boy, did you hear about what Brad did?
They criticized
Didn't bring his seat in. Didn't bring his seat into the hunt. That all day said he wasn't planning on it until he saw you didn't have a seat.
Right.
Jeez.
That's a good one. That's a good story. One we could actually share. So kudos, Brad.
The Drury Outdoor Spanking Machine.
That's it, man. It's you get indoctrined to some
That's combat
hazing here. Yeah, that's right.
No doubt. Well, if folks want some DeerCast swag, it's coming.
Oh, hey. Oh, I got one on. Can we see this?
I don't know.
That's right. We have some new stuff coming. We've been working on some new gear, and we're going to launch a new website here within the next week or so. And the new gear, it's being shipped in right now. So new hats, some new pullovers, fleece pullover, lightweight stuff.
I want to see some hero shots of people wearing their DeerCast swag.
There's a DeerCast hat. Pretty nice, actually, that new DeerCast hat. So
yeah. It's
looking
coming.
forward to it. It's coming.
Make great Christmas presents. Just saying.
All right. That's right.
All right.
I anticipated to sell out.
Brad, thanks so much for hopping on with us. Glad you recovered. Glad your face is back to normal.
As normal as it can be.
As normal as it can be. No, this has been fantastic. Fantastic. My pleasure.
Love you, buddy. Thanks for joining us, and look forward to the next time you come into St. Louis. We can have that beer. Talk about the good stories.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Take care. Thanks so much.
Until next time, everybody, be safe, identify your targets, and peace out. We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV was brought to you by Leopold.